Challenge: access Microsoft command line tools. In this lab, we'll show how to access the command prompt, PowerShell, and the Windows terminal. Remember that you can use the search tool, the run prompt, and a lot of other methods to access these tools. Use whatever is easiest for you. And consider pinning these tools to the taskbar and/or the start menu. Make those shortcuts for ease of availability. Let's show a demonstration of these tools now. I'm starting at a Windows 10 professional system, and we'll start with the command prompt. Several ways to open this. Usually the easiest is to go to your search tool and just type in command, and you'll see the command prompt here. You could also type CMD because that's the executable name for the command prompt. And so you could run it from the search tool, or you could run it from the run prompt just by pressing the Windows key and R key on your keyboard and type CMD as shown here. Another way is to go through the start menu in Windows 10 and go all the way down to Windows System, and you'll see the command prompt there. And another way is to right-click on the Start button, and you'll see the option for command prompt by default. And that's only for Windows 10. You won't see that in Windows 11. So a lot of ways to open the command prompt. And quite often, you'll want to open it as an administrator, meaning in elevated mode. So you can see right here, we have command prompt admin. If you wanted to do that from the run prompt, you would type CMD and then press Control-Shift-Enter, and that would open that as an administrator. Or from the search tool, right-click on command prompt and select Run as Administrator. But let's open the command prompt as a regular user now. So I'll just click on it, and you'll see it brings up the command prompt for us. And from here, we can run basic commands. I could run a dir to see what's inside the directory I'm working in. I could ping things on the internet. And so basic commands we can run in here. If you need to run more advanced commands, like if you needed to do something with netsh, you would want to do that in elevated mode. And if you wanted to do more advanced commands that require commandlets, well, then you would want the PowerShell. And that's what you're going to be working in more often. So let's show that now. I'm going to close out of here. And so multiple ways to open the PowerShell. First of all, if we go to the search option, we can type PowerShell. And you'll see on this Windows 10 computer, I have Windows PowerShell here, which is blue. And that means it's version 5. That's the older version. But then we have PowerShell 7, version 7, with a much darker blue, almost black. And that is the one that I'd recommend you use. Use whatever the latest version is that you can get for your system. So that's one way to open this. Another way would be to go to the run prompt and type PowerShell, which I have in the history here. You could also go to Start, scroll all the way down in Windows 10, and go to Windows PowerShell and Windows PowerShell again, though this will by default run the older version unless you change the environmental variables. You could also get to it in Windows 10 by right-clicking Start and modifying what comes up here by default. We could change that by going to our settings, and we can do a Windows I to bring up settings. Go to personalization, go to taskbar, and then scroll down here. You'll see replace command prompt with PowerShell in the menu when I right-click the Start button or press the Windows key plus X. So we'll turn that on now, close that settings window, and if we right-click on the Start button, you'll see now it's Windows PowerShell. Okay, but I really want to run the latest version of Windows PowerShell whenever possible. So there's two ways for me to do that on this system. Two quick ways. Go to PowerShell and make sure I'm selecting PowerShell 7, or create myself a shortcut, which I've already done down here. And I've got a shortcut to Windows PowerShell on the bottom here on the taskbar. Generally, I'll be running this as an administrator. So I'm going to right click on it and run as admin and say yes to user account control because I am an admin and I can do this. And here is our PowerShell as an administrator. Super awesome. Okay, let's say you wanted to add the PowerShell as a shortcut. Let me bring up my Windows 11 system here. We could locate PowerShell. We could do a search. And again, you can press Windows and Q to bring up the search option. And if I bring up PowerShell here, we'll see Windows PowerShell. Just type in that name. And if we right click, we see the options to pin it to the start menu and to pin it to the taskbar. So first I'll pin it to the taskbar and we'll see a shortcut pops up right down here. If we right click and go to pin to start, now if I press the Windows key again, you'll see Windows PowerShell here. And so what I like to do with shortcuts, for the ones that I use all the time, I'll put them on the taskbar, the most commonly used applications. For ones that I use often, but not all the time, I'll put them in the start menu here. And you can have a lot more icons here, a lot more shortcuts to what you need. All right. And then you can open that up real quick right from the shortcut on the taskbar. You'll notice this version of Windows 11 is actually just running PowerShell 5. If we do a $PS version table, you'll see it's just 5.1. So again, you're going to want to get the latest version of PowerShell. We'll show how to do that in a later video. There we go. And we have our nice shortcut here. And I use it all the time. If I'm working on this Windows laptop, I'll right click it and select Run as Administrator. That's just so fast for me. Just all we have to do, right click on the shortcut, select Run as Administrator, because I'm doing that very commonly. Of course, we do have to say yes to user account control here. And you can change the look of your PowerShell. You might have noticed that when I opened it before, it had a bit of a different look to it. If you right click on the title bar and go to Properties, you can change the colors that are being used. You can change the layout, the font type, and size. So you can adjust it how you see fit. Right here, I have the font size pretty big so you can see it easily. And so from here in PowerShell, we can do those basic commands like we were saying, like run a dir, which is going to show tons and tons of information, or run a ping command. We also showed in a previous video using the test connection command, which is very much like ping, but different results here and can be used programmatically. You can't use the test connection command on the command prompt. This is actually a commandlet, and that's spelled CMDLET, commandlet. So it's a little bit different, and these are not available in the actual original command prompt. You would use the PowerShell for this. And that's part of the reason of using PowerShell. There's all kinds of commandlets that they build into it that can be used as commands right in the PowerShell or can be used programmatically within scripts and programs. So a lot of ways to open the PowerShell. One of the ways we mentioned was by changing the settings and right-clicking on Start and going here to open PowerShell. But if you're working in Windows 11, by default, if you right-click Start, you get the option for Windows Terminal. You don't get PowerShell, and you can't really change this as far as I know. Windows Terminal is the direction that Microsoft has been going for a while. So let's show Windows Terminal since we have it here. And again, a variety of ways to open this. You can do it from the search tool. You can open up the search with your Windows Q and type Terminal, and you'll see Windows Terminal. If you want to open Windows Terminal from the run prompt, you would just type WT for Windows Terminal, and that'll bring it up for you. All right. And quite often you may want to run this as an admin as well. So you have that option if you right click start, or if you right click when you search for it. But let's just run it in regular mode for now. So we'll click on Windows Terminal. That'll bring up the Windows Terminal program. And you'll see by default, what does it do? It opens Windows PowerShell. So you may say, well, what's the point? Well, there's a few reasons to use Terminal. Terminal behaves more in a Unix or Linux fashion to start with. And so it's something that a lot of sysadmins can be a little more comfortable with if they're used to working in those environments. But one of the beautiful things of Terminal is you can open multiple tabs. So here I have PowerShell running, and it runs that by default in a tab. And this is the tab up here. I could run a command here and let that run, and then I could open another tab just by clicking the plus sign, and it'll open another PowerShell tab where I could do other things. Take a look at the contents within this directory. So I can have different things running in these different tabs here. And if you click on the drop-down menu here, you'll see that there's additional options. We could also run a command prompt in here if we wanted to, or a connection to an Azure Cloud Shell and work with remote instances on the cloud. So I could open a command prompt and have that availability as well. Command prompt, PowerShell, and other stuff as well. Plus, if I'm working in a particular tab, I could right-click that tab and split it and do what's known as terminal multiplexing. So now I have two terminals here in the same tab. I could split it again and work in that manner. If you're done with a particular split, just exit out and it'll bring you back to the other one, whatever you had previously. Let's show this on my other system, back to the Windows 10 system. And I have Terminal here. I have it pinned to the taskbar. So I'm going to run that now. Bring that up. Okay, a little bit easier to see. And we see, again, it's running PowerShell. By default, Terminal looks for the latest version of PowerShell that you have. If you have multiple versions of PowerShell, it's going to run the latest one for you in the tab there. Now, you'll see I have some additional options here. Not only is there PowerShell version 7, but also PowerShell version 5, command prompt, PowerShell.NET Global, Azure Cloud Shell, but we also have some Linux distributions. And this is a really cool thing with Terminal. If you have already installed WSL, which is the Windows subsystem for Linux, then you could go and install very basic versions of these Linux distributions like Debian or Ubuntu or Fedora or what have you. But that gets a little bit beyond this video, and beyond really the A+, you would have to install the Windows subsystem for Linux first, then make sure you're running Terminal, and then you'd have to install one of these Linux distributions, and then you'd be able to access those from here. So for example, if I wanted to work in Ubuntu, I'd click on that and that will load it up. And it was already loaded previously, so it brings me right to a prompt, which is very Linux-like. However, if I was to do a dir, I would just see the contents of my Windows folder that I'm working in here. It looks like Linux, but it's running in Windows, right? But it is an actual Linux kernel. We could bring up another one. I could bring up Debian here that I'm running. And when you hover on these, you can see that it tells you the shortcut key that you can use to switch to the different tabs with the keyboard. So for example, this would be Control-Alt-3, Control-Alt-2, Control-Alt-1 over here. So you can switch between those as you see fit with the keyboard or the mouse. So now I'm running Linux. I'm actually running two different distributions of Linux at the same time in different tabs and a PowerShell. We can have a command prompt open as well if we really wanted to. We could multiplex the screen in PowerShell or the command prompt by splitting it. You can duplicate tabs. So that's some of the stuff that we can do here with Windows Terminal and really take advantage of all of our command line stuff in one place. So now I challenge you, go ahead and look at all the different ways that you can access and open the command prompt, the PowerShell, and Windows Terminal. Remember to use the search tool, the run prompt, the start menu, and so on and so on. And definitely consider making shortcuts, pinning those tools to the taskbar and or the start menu.